Ronaldo Chrooman got the offer of a lifetime. Become Tenhog's assistant, alongside Ruud van Nistelrooy. Ever since his 2-year tenure at Go Ahead Eagles, he's despised the latter. It's true that bald managers are on this list, but Tenhog once kindly gave him a reference. When the opportunity to become his assistant arrived, he immediately accepted, even if it meant being a number 2. It turns out, he'd be a useless number 3, because Tenhog took more advice from Ruud van Nistelrooy, which wasn't saying much, since this guy barely listened to anyone. Ronald confronted him about this after a 3-0 loss to Liverpool. "Why are you so stubborn?" Stubborn is also wise. A 2-1 loss to Brighton, 0-0 to Palace, multiple Europa League draws, but Ten Hag's end arrived after a controversial 2-1 loss to West Ham. Sacked in the evening, while the rest of the coaching staff remained on an interim basis until a new coach was found. Except for Ronaldo Chrooman. Supposedly, Ten Hag had multiple meetings with the board throughout the season. Some of them included Ruud, but not his other ass man. In these exchanges, they asked Ten Hag whether the tea lady was necessary, and more importantly, what the problem was. Every time, he listed Chrooman as one of the reasons for the poor campaign. Ruud agreed with him. The list may have been valid. Did Chrooman ever get an opportunity to explain himself to the board? No. He just received his dismissal via WhatsApp, and like Ten Hag, was without a job with a lower severance. Chrooman should have read this book before joining, because he would have realized that he and Eric are complete opposites. Sometimes, chasing a challenge can find you better opportunities. Ruud van Nistelrooy before his first match as intern United manager. Chrooman could have been salty about this. Instead, he was irate. He took a chance, tried his best to make it work, wasn't listened to, talked down behind his back, and became jobless with a damaged reputation. So, he now had one goal in mind: follow Ten Hag to whatever country or region he went to and make sure he achieved more than him. Welcome to Chasing Ten Hag. In this adventure, free agent coach Ronaldo Chrooman will go to the same country as Erik Ten Hag. The aim is to achieve more during his tenure than the bald Dutchman. For example, if Eric wins a league title and gets poached elsewhere, Chrooman must at least win one league title and another trophy before he's allowed to chase him to another country. Is this a story motivated by revenge? Partially, but whether he can achieve it or not relies on Ten Hag receiving a job. Despite the reputation hit, Eric should be no short of suitors. 1.5 years later. After a near 2-year wait, Erik Ten Hag was hired by his former club, FC Utrecht. Their manager Ron Jans retired after a 6th place finish, giving Eric a chance to reunite with his roots. He once built them into a respectable side, and can do so again while trying to fix his reputation. Chrooman meanwhile grew his hair out as he waited for his chance. He'd like an Eredivisie job to begin the chase, but he'd settle for the 2nd division. Except, he might not have to, because by the end of October, Ten Hag's Utrecht were in last place. No victories in his opening 10 matches, the phrase of never going back looked wiser with each passing week. Chrooman's chase may be on hold, with Ten Hag's employment status becoming insecure. To be safe, he did apply to a few openings. Vitesse are near the bottom of the 2nd division, so that seemed like a slam dunk. It was received, but they wanted to see how the caretaker does. That's fine, since Ten Hag may be unemployed soon. Even Chrooman received questions for his thoughts, and if he would be interested in taking over. Oh, how funny that would be.
The worst assistant manager of my career thinks he can take my job?
Ten Hag turned it around, grabbing his first wins, which bided some time. Chrooman continued to get asked about him, and he responded, "I'm not saying he should have been sacked, but I'm surprised they kept him." Despite Chrooman's joy, he continued not to receive interviews as his first 4 applications were rejected, even by a lifeless Vitesse. That was until FC Eindhoven gave him a chance to talk. Chrooman needed to get himself a role sooner rather than later, especially with Ten Hag's turnaround in form. He said the things Chairman Ronald Oning wanted to hear, and with the added benefit of the same first name, Chrooman was successful and became FC Eindhoven boss. FC Eindhoven weren't in a terrible position. 12th with 22 matches remaining and only 2 points behind a promotion playoff spot. Their previous manager Maurice Verbeerne went to Heracles, leaving behind a decent squad. They were filled with several loans, especially in defense, but a few players caught Chrooman's eye. a midfield trio of captains Sven Blumel, Dan Huysman, and El Bouchtaoui. He'll be called El Bucha. At striker, there were a pair of intriguing youngsters, Ayatelea and Ian Verlat. The latter looked ready for the first team, yet the star of the show was Rangelo Yanga. The Curaçao international had the third most goals in the division, so Chrooman liked the attack. Tactically though, there weren't enough center backs to use his preferred 5-defender system. Instead, he adapted to the squad, and with a lack of strong wingers, he experimented with the 4-1-2-1-2, aka 4-4-2 diamond. Narrow edition, because he has to be crazy to try the wide variation. Unlike their city rivals, FC Eindhoven aren't decorated with silverware. In fact, they haven't participated in the top flight since 1977. Not a good omen if Chrooman wanted to chase Tenhog. With his debut versus Telstar, he tried a slow balanced approach to see how things would play out. The players didn't listen, which nearly saw the opponent score. Still, there were good signs, with a few decent chances prior to the interval. This led to the introduction of Janga. Despite his age, he can run behind his opponents as his scoring reputation showed, and not long later, he doubled the lead. Chrooman's dream debut quickly disappeared when the referee decided to give a penalty to Telstar due to Dirksen's handball. It ended terribly, as the goalkeeper Joachim Olsrud, under no pressure, misplaced a 10-yard pass, leading to Telstar's equalizer. This is life with Chrooman. There were positive signs, however. He had key players missing, yet the offensive performances were solid. Unfortunately, more became unavailable, and versus Roda JC, Sven Blumel would get injured, subbing in 16-year-old Ian Verlat. He struggled against Telstar, but paired with Janga, the kid would score his first career goal. Okay, first career goal for Chrooman. He actually got a brace, as they destroyed Roda 5-1. Players continued to miss out on the squad, and one got released. With Pegsvolle visiting, Chrooman's side needed to be sharp, and Ian Verlat started off well. To open the scoring though, it would be the star man, Dan Huysman. Pegsvolle equalized, but Janga in the second half earned Eindhoven another victory. Suddenly, they sprung up into 5th place, which is the promotion playoffs. In the Netherlands' second division, there are youth teams. Thankfully, they can't get promoted, so no need to worry about their placement. Granted, you do have to worry about their seniors in the KNVB Beker, aka the Dutch Cup. FC Eindhoven had to face Ajax, and Chrooman needed to put some in his eyes after seeing them score 7. Thanks to goals from Verlat and El Bucha, it was 2-2 versus Den Bosch prior to Christmas. With less than 15 minutes left, FC Eindhoven would win it off a corner. Hopping into 4th place already, Chrooman believed in his squad so much that he changed the board's expectations to a top 4 finish. With a transfer window approaching, could he work his magic? By the way, how was Tenhog doing? Previously in danger of losing his job, he steadied the ship and remained fine for now. Despite no transfer budget, Eindhoven had over 12k in wages to spend. That was until January 1st. On that day, 3 players arrived: Franco De Boli, Ignacio Shelgrane, and Mateusz Maia. Who were these 3? And why is the wage budget gone? These weren't Chrooman's signings, because he wouldn't be stupid enough to sign these guys at 8.5k euros a week. The previous top earner was Huysman and Sligers, making 2.5. Oh wait, they're now making 8.5k too, with a match highest earners clause. Added with Sligers' injury, 3 of the top 5 earners are useless. Wanting to fire the director of football on the spot, Chrooman confronted him and only didn't throw him out the window due to a promise he made to the board. Vladimir Bozo pleaded his case and said the former manager insisted on these transfers. The man was, of course, Maurice Verbene, who left and became Heracles Almelo coach. This jackass has caused Chrooman an absolute headache, as no transfers were made. Plus, the former assistant was apparently still training the Eindhoven players. In addition, Verlat and Talea's contracts couldn't be renewed due to a lack of money. If things couldn't get worse, Young Aze, or in short form Jazz, destroyed them. Specifically, Joel van den Baan, who grabbed all 4 goals. With 13 games to play, they remained in 4th with a difficult target of maintaining a playoff spot. Despite the pressure on Chrooman, they reveled in it with 5 wins on the trot. However, the run ended due to a 2-0 loss to Valvik. No worries. Chrooman's team returned to form with 2 victories prior to a crucial match versus Heerenveen. Eindhoven were behind by 4 points with 9 games left. The opponents were in mixed form, causing a once large gap to potentially turn into a single point. Eindhoven may have been the away side, but began strongly. Heerenveen though were in their spot for a reason, and Fernino's danger led to Aribo smacking the bar. Their woodwork hit was unlucky, as Eindhoven's next attack, Stad was given all the room to dribble forward, and his shot went off the post and in. A couple minutes later, Stad's momentum continued, as his cross to Janga would find the back of the net. Scoring his 50th for Eindhoven, Janga's prowess would immediately be matched by Fernino. Advancing past the hour mark, Heerenveen were on the offensive, and their player Conde potentially scored the goal of the season. 2-2 with less than 30 minutes to go, Eindhoven would receive a free kick that got headed away, but they maintained possession and slowly played it to Svoboda on the right, who soon passed it to El Bucha, and the man on an amateur contract cut it back to Rangelo Janga for the lead. That goal was the winner, which led to the two clubs going in opposite directions. Heerenveen had the fall-off of ages, as they failed to win in their next 4 matches. To make it worse, they sold Fernino in the middle of it, and while it was a great transfer sum, it was the final nail in their hopes for automatic promotion. FC Eindhoven passed them in the table with 2 additional wins. Over these 11 games, Janga scored 8, and Argentine De Boli found 9. His wage was stupidly high, but his ability in the air provided Eindhoven another approach, keeping them unpredictable. Just not to young Ajax, who like the seniors, destroyed FC Eindhoven as well. Young Ajax would win the league title, which meant second and third received automatic promotion. A few draws would make things uncomfortable, but on the penultimate match day versus Roda JC, the team Chrooman earned his first victory against would also be the club he'd defeat to clinch automatic promotion to the Eredivisie. A strike from Verlaat and a hat-trick from fellow teenager Aya Talea saw history made. FC Eindhoven would be playing in the top flight for the first time in almost 50 years. A lot of praise will go to Chrooman and the strikers, although Akraf El Bucha deserved a huge shout out thanks to his 10-goal contributions while not earning a single euro all season. Meanwhile, at Utrecht, Tenhog avoided the sack. His managerial performances was like a toxic partner, from stable to insecure, back and forth throughout the campaign in relation to his job security. Despite that, he managed to get his club an 8th place finish. Chrooman will see him soon. Eindhoven's promotion to the Eredivisie is incredible for Chrooman's reputation, but even better news arrived. Chairperson Ronald Onink wanted to step aside, and a rich man was eager to take over. That was Hungarian investor Zsolt Buzas, and for 1.7 million euros, he bought the club. The man was a finance tycoon. Buy Chrooman that yacht. A tycoon is financially the best possible type of takeover you can get. If you can ignore the shadiness of how that money came to be, it speeds up your club's progress and gives the team a makeover. Chrooman and Zsolt Buzas built a tight relationship, with new scouts signed, facilities upgraded, and most importantly, not sacking the Dutchman. Even helped decrease the wages of players. Others got an increase, like El Bucha allowed to live off a wage. Plus, lonely goalkeeper Joachim Olsrud joined permanently. Now, it wasn't the 40 million stated he would make available, but with 10 million for transfers and almost 300k free in the wage budget, a lot could be done. Many defenders were signed. A Croat, a Uruguayan, a Polishman, a Senegalese, 2 loans from Chelsea, and a KFC bucket of Americans. The US became a goldmine, as there was no tariffs on footballers. Not everyone was set for success, and a few sales were needed to balance Olsrud's transfer. Many predicted FC Eindhoven to roughly finish in 11th place. Tenhog, on the other end, was expected to improve Utrecht to 5th. Thanks to a 7 million sale to a player previously out on loan, their quality of depth improved. The two's first interaction wouldn't arrive until matchday 14 in November, so until then, Chrooman had to focus on a strong start. Unfortunately, due to Janga's hip injury to end last season, and Talea's future stolen by Toulouse prior to Buzas' arrival, De Boli and the promising Verlaat paired together at striker. Their campaign began with fellow promotees, ADO Den Haag. And the formerly unwanted De Boli grabbed Eindhoven's first Eredivisie goal since Lambert Krekels on May 15, 1977. That date was their final game in the Eredivisie, until now. Unlike then where a clean sheet was kept, ADO Den Haag equalized. KNVB was the goal scorer, and he'd contribute again, but not in the correct net. Chrooman's temporary luck vanished with De Bolie injured, and an ADO equalizer. Both sides got chances for a winner, and at added time, Janga, who recently returned, put in a bullet cross to Verlat, and the youngster found the winner. Though with De Bolie's injury, Shai Hershko, aka Hershey, was signed. A striker with incredible finishing and other impressive attributes, he topped off the 16 additions made, as Jolt and Chrooman must have looked at the Chelsea strategy. In FC Eindhoven's first home game in the Eredivisie since 1977, Sparta Rotterdam would defeat them 2-1. Not nice to lose with a failed clearance. Next up was Ajax, who defeated Chrooman 7-1 last season. It went a lot better than anticipated, a mere 1-0 loss. Ajax were perfect through their first 3, and so were Tenhog's Utrecht. Trash talk isn't Chrooman's specialty. When he stoops that low, his overconfidence slaps him in the face. When an opposition manager does it, like Vitor Panera, Chrooman embraces it and adds him to the hate list. Heishman opened it up in the second half, El Bucha extended it from the spot, and Verlat's brace totaled it to 4. That gave him the talent of the month, and this kid had the potential to be the best goal scorer in club history. Too early to say at age 17, but with Joey Slegers no longer at the club, and Mr. Eindhoven Henk Bloemers having the record, it was in his hands, or feet. Simple schedule or not, Tenhog won his first 5 fixtures. Utrecht's key players included Chan Bosdowan and Ronaldo Chrooman, while Taylor Booth showed consistency in the league. However, their star man is Noah Ohio. From Almere, he had a unique youth career, switching between both Mancunian clubs and even a stint at RB Leipzig. A return to his birth nation didn't manifest much until Tenhog arrived. Their start would slow down due to a 3-all draw to Feyenoord and a loss away to PSV. But after signing a contract in October, him and Utrecht remained strong throughout the remainder of 2026. Chrooman, on the other hand, couldn't stop losing. A scoreless draw against his former club and a victory over NAC Breda was a temporary positive. Afterwards, the side would lose 5 in a row. They were tight defeats to be fair, but the higher division proved difficult to adapt to. A 4-2 loss to Heerenveen, who won the promotional playoff, was tough to take. As usual, tactics were questioned, injuries occurred, and new players became annoyed due to playing out of position. Through 11 match days, they were 12th, 2 points above relegation. Meanwhile, Tenhog is in a European spot. In their build-up to their first ever encounter, there were 2 match days. Utrecht comfortably put away AZ and Willem II, and Eindhoven ended their poor form. Ian Verlat again was crucial with a goal in a 1-1 draw with Twente and a hat-trick versus Almere City. That placed them with Big Mitro as top scorers in the division. Utrecht still had more than double the points of them. Most annoyingly of all, talks began about Utrecht in the Eredivisie title race, with both PSV and Ajax 2 points ahead. It was miraculous work by Eric, and Chrooman wanted to put a stop to it. The anticipated encounter arrived. Master versus apprentice. What a headline. Master of what? Defeat was expected, and drama began prior to kickoff with Chrooman's demeanor towards Tenhog. This meant a lot to Ronald, but 3 minutes in, Noah Ohio was left wide open. You've got to be kidding me. This wasn't a joke, as in the 15th minute, Chrooman's misery continued with Taylor Booth flopping for a penalty. Caprari made it 2, as this seemed to be a tragic comedy. However, after half an hour, Eindhoven burst up the pitch, and Renato Vega's run from midfield got rewarded. It wasn't a match with a lot of opportunities, and Eindhoven struggled to find much well into the second half. Utrecht smacked a free kick off the post, and Noah Ohio grabbed the third. It was offside though, and that decision kept Eindhoven in it. Chrooman switched to his roots for the last 15 minutes, a 5-back system that brought forth more chances to Utrecht. So Chrooman wagered it all and went on the mega offensive. Chances began to arrive, but Hershey missed. Not long later, he'd receive it again in the box and found De Bolie for the equalizer. Undeserved? Potentially, but the celebrations were majestic as Utrecht's pursuit for the title was halted.
This guy, for everything I've done for his career, he decides to celebrate like he's won the Dutchman? A 3-1 loss to Sparta Rotterdam after? And another damn unlucky draw. Ajax?
3-1 down to AZ Alkmaar, FC Eindhoven turned this game around. Across to De Boli made it 3-2, and another, this time a header down to Nguyen for an equalizer. In the final 10 minutes,
let's go! Let's go!
The new Dutch youth international Verlaat would grab a 5th to cement the victory. It's a shame that the final games before the winter break resulted in only one win, and a torn hamstring for Janga. Worst of all, Brett Nguyen, who has low-key been a baller with 5 goals and 6 assists, suffered a twisted ankle in the new year. The team were placed in 10th with 22 points. Meanwhile, Utrecht comfortably remained in a European spot. The start to January troubled Eindhoven. A loss to Ajax is understandable, yet elimination to FC Volendam in the Dutch Cup and a defeat to FC Groningen in the league caused some adjustments to the system and the arrival of a proper defensive midfielder. Renato Vega worked better in center midfield, and to convert more Tonkara was like bashing your head into a wall. John Thompson can do a decent job there, but the 4.3 million transfer of Sergio Gonzalez was a significant improvement. By the end of the window, the original 16 transfers upped to 25, and you'll never see most of them. The tactical tweaks reversed the bad form, as Chrooman defeated go-ahead Eagles 3-1. Afterwards, NAC Breda were smashed thanks to Verlaat's hat-trick. FC Volendam kept things even, while Fortuna Sittard were subsequently defeated. A 4-match undefeated run placed Eindhoven in 9th, and with 9 to play, they may have a shot at Europe, although tough games approached, like 2nd place Feyenoord. It was a game that saw little action. However, to begin the second half, a penalty was earned for Eindhoven, only for Verlaat to get stopped. Normally, that would destroy a kid's confidence, but Ian Verlaat was not some kid. In the 71st minute, a crossman for Hershey was fumbled by Baylo, and Verlaat was right there to win the game. A massive performance at home, but away from it, Eindhoven would struggle, like in the derby. Enes Destan left unmarked, gave PSV the double. Back home, a solid 3-1 victory over Heerenveen. On the road, a 2-1 loss to Twente. Back at home, a 2-1 triumph over Almere City. Now, it was time to travel to Utrecht. Since their draw with Ajax, Tenhog's men went on a 14-match undefeated run that spanned across 5 months. While they didn't win many against the very best in the country, they won the games they were supposed to, which led them into first place, temporarily. Ajax, Feyenoord, and PSV were all within a grasp of the shield. The race was about to be shaken up, with Ajax hosting PSV on matchday 30. The result could make this race crazier, or it'd become a battle between Ajax and Utrecht. Ajax lost 3 of their prior 5, which caused this scenario. At the Johan Cruyff Arena, they wouldn't have a problem, as a Mitrovic hat-trick returned them to first. That leads us to Tenhog versus Chrooman. Europe became a realistic possibility for FC Eindhoven, while Utrecht needed to keep up with Ajax in order to make their season finale showdown meaningful. Ajax swung into form at the right time, destroying Heerenveen to win the Dutch Cup. Helps when you receive 4 penalties, and defeated them again away from home. Pressure on Tenhog. For Chrooman, he was excited to ruin Tenhog's chase for the title. Hershey nearly made it a possibility. Eindhoven looked solid, but the second half was when the state of Ohio rejoiced over good things said about their name. Noah would do the unthinkable. 30 yards away from goal, he took on the entire Eindhoven team and magically scored the opener. Later on, he doubled the lead to keep Utrecht in the title race. Chrooman was pissed and couldn't imagine a world where Tenhog would win an Eredivisie. It was all out of his hands, as he had to see the media praise the bald man. On the last match day, it was Ajax versus FC Utrecht. Tenhog's return to the Eredivisie began rocky, but he was a victory away from a miraculous title. Winning their first Eredivisie as FC Utrecht would be like a fairy tale, and a second-minute goal from Josip Schutalo made it remain that way. Ajax would pulverize Utrecht 4-0 and lift the Eredivisie. Chrooman was thrilled to hear about that after his side qualified for the European playoff spot. Maybe a little too thrilled about the former. 7 points in the final 3 games saw a miraculous 5th place finish. Here's how it works. Ajax's Dutch Cup triumph caused his 58th to battle it out in a 4-team knockout, win 2 knockout rounds, and earn the right to play in the Europa Conference League qualifiers. FC Eindhoven's position gave them home advantage. These fixtures are normally dramatic, but like the title decider, it seemed a foregone conclusion. Sparta Rotterdam couldn't handle the heat, as it became 3-0 within 16 minutes. A penalty for Sparta in the 50th minute had them crawl back within 1. However, Hershey would score a brace in the remaining time to set a FC Eindhoven vs Twente final. More pressure? Not for Chrooman. Before Twente could score their first, Eindhoven had 3 thanks to Hershey and a Muyen brace. Patrick Peda and Franco De Boli added to the tally to earn a 5-1 victory and confirm European football. Overall, a welcome surprise, as Europe didn't seem to be on the thought for the most part. A bunch of young players stepped up, including the now 18-year-old Ian Verlaat, who scored 18. Muyen had 19 goal contributions, which awarded him the Best Young Player of the Year and Best Transfer. Plus, Hershey found his feet in the latter half, which brought forth his incredible end of season. The top 4 are out of reach for this moment, but here's where Chrooman is at with this challenge. No trophies for Tenhog, but his highest league finish is 2nd. Surpassing that will be a challenge in itself, and who knows how Utrecht will do in Europe and in domestic cups. For Chrooman though, he's sure he'll catch up and make sure Tenhog is defeated in a match. A league stage spot in the Conference League and maybe a run in the cup would be a bonus. Who knows what challenges he'll run into, but chasing Tenhog continues. Ronaldo Chrooman was thrilled. FC Eindhoven had their best season in club history with European football on the horizon. And none of that mattered. Tenhog won Manager of the Year and earned the plaudits, which overshadowed Chrooman. Although Tenhog hasn't won a trophy yet, but Ronald still hasn't defeated him. Regardless, the club's best ever finish couldn't have happened without him and Joel Bouzas's money. His generational wealth provided a little more to spend, like on 2 left backs, Nathaniel Brown from Hoffenheim and the Irishman Abdo Atef via Bohemians. Chrooman saw the success Tenhog had with Noah Ohio and wanted an option like that off the bench. So his scouts provided him with a lemon. 1 lemon from All Boys for 2.4 million. There was drama in the window, as goalkeeper Joachim Olsrud left for Juventus via his release clause. He'd be replaced by Inter's Luis Babatz for half the price. Signing depth options in midfield was crucial too, which included the loan of Tom Bischoff. Finally, with European football, Eindhoven needed to worry about registration rules. Verlaat is the only useful player homegrown at the club. That was until his former friend Ayatalia returned on loan from Toulouse. Qualification for the UEFA Conference League was a breeze, as would be the start of the Eredivisie campaign. They'd win their 5 opening games, as the partnership of Ian Verlaat and Hershey looked strong, especially the latter, who scored 9. Results would fizzle out with a loss to AZ and a draw to Willem II. FC Eindhoven still lacks experience, as bad results will occur. Still, when there was a big home game, the team was up for it, like for the Eindhoven Derby. PSV vastly altered their side. Lots of new faces can take time to adjust to one another, or maybe not. A rough start, but Hershey would use his poacher instinct 6 minutes later to equalize. Not long later, Babatz grabbed a cross, but felt pain in his arm and required a sub. It turned out to be a fractured wrist. His replacement was Michael Verrips, and the Dutchman didn't need to do anything. Eindhoven's high press led to a poor goal kick from Walter Benitez, and with the triangle combinations of the strikers and attacking midfielder, Brett Muyen found the winner. FC Eindhoven's first competitive win over PSV since 1954. The 2 goal scorers would each find another in a victory over Volendam. Last season, Brett Muyen received the Eredivisie Best Young Player of the Year, and at the end of 2027, he'd shocked the European awards and collected the European Golden Boy. An incredible year for the kid, and the team in general. They were in a 3-way tie for first place, and next up was Chrooman's nemesis. Tenhog's FC Utrecht took a step back with an increased European schedule. It's not like Chrooman cared. Rough shape or not, he wanted one thing. The starting 11 was similar to most fixtures outside of the keeper. Brown and Ponti as the fullbacks, Patrick Peda paired with the Croatian Nenad Eller, a midfield trio of Sergio Gonzalez at anchor, Carlos Reyes at midsala, and Danny Heisman as the advanced playmaker. The attacking trio was of course Brett Muyen, Hershey, and Talea. Verlat was on the bench, but not because of his dry run of goals. He just wasn't fit to start, and Talea showed promise in the Conference League. Nevertheless, could the home side deal with Noah Ohio? It was Eindhoven with a strong start. Mateo Ponte receives it from Sergio Gonzalez, and the Uruguayan sprints by the back line and smashes it in. The fans went crazy, especially the ones with Chrooman wigs. Their delight continued half an hour in, as Nguyen found space and made it 2-0. Eindhoven dominated, and Tenhog had no answers. Patrick Petta headed in a third, and Chrooman finally got a victory over Eric, now with a record of 1-1-1. Following the team's jubilation was the Conference League. The league stage of the competition has 6 games to be played, unlike the 2 stronger tournaments. Finish in the top 8 and you qualify for the round of 16. Place in 9th to 24th and you go to the playoff round, which requires a victory over 2 legs to reach the proper knockouts. So far, Eindhoven won a match and barely got a draw to Finnish club HJK. Real Sociedad were the next opponents, which was a huge deal. Chrooman faced them when he was Tenhog's ass man, and since then, 7th place was their worst ever finish, which is why they're here. The Reds like Takefusa Kubo had them perceived as a good overall squad, but the home side failed to make an impact. Eindhoven won the ball in the middle of the pitch, where a counter led to a pass tackled off Nguyen. However, the loose ball rolled to Ponte, and he decided to have a crack with his weak foot. Absolute stunner. Sociedad's simple tiki-taka approach was dull until the 89th minute. Their cross from the left found Kubo, but Petta blocked it, as Eindhoven earned a monumental triumph over Sociedad. Their remaining fixtures went as such: a 5-0 win over Sheriff Tiraspol, a 0-0 draw to Rapid Vienna, and a 9-1 victory over Dinamo Tbilisi to finish in 6th place. Eindhoven's big win after big win had them at an all-time high. At the end of the day though, they could only keep that up for so long, as a visit to Feyenoord brought them back down to reality. They were now 3 points behind Ajax. Ian Verlat failed to score again. 10 hours of competitive football without a goal was easy to forget with the recent success. But for a striker, this gets into your head. In the next match versus Sparta Rotterdam though, he would knock that gorilla off his shoulder with a 7th minute strike. He'd grab a second soon later to aid in a 3-0 victory. Verlat's dry spell turned into a goal streak, with the clincher versus ADO Den Haag and the opener versus Ajax. Chrooman never had a good result against them, and the bright start was short-lived, as Sam Adingra scored? How did they manage to loan him? Ajax are the best team in the division, but they'd fall behind again thanks to Sergio Gonzalez. Then prior to halftime, Brett Nguyen made it 3-1. Eindhoven were dominant, and even with a late Mitrovic header, Chrooman defeated the Amsterdam club for the first time, and now we're tied for 1st place. Only to concede in the 94th minute to draw 18th place PEC Zwolle. Through their success, it's easy to forget about Erik ten Hag. Placed in 11th, Chrooman cared less and less about the bald Dutchman. On December 5th, the attention was on him, as after a 3-0 loss to Feyenoord, FC Utrecht announced his departure. Erik ten Hag has been sacked. Chrooman celebrated in the streets of Eindhoven, launching fireworks and popping champagne. Not only has Erik taken a reputation hit, but Chrooman was on the up and could easily surpass what he did. Well, not easily. Chrooman required a trophy and had a chance in all competitions, but his best shot would be the Dutch Cup, where in the 3rd round, he faced Ajax. The pair didn't entertain like previously, as Ajax's defenders contributed to 2 goals, one for Eindhoven. This went all the way to penalties, where in the 3rd round, Babats made an incredible save, but Nguyen would be denied as well. Tom Doyle got Ajax back on track, while Patrick Petta had his shot saved by his countrymen. A Champong sealed it for Ajax, as Eindhoven were eliminated. Chrooman had a difficult January, not just because of the Dutch Cup, but his naivety to think that they can win the Eredivisie hit a reality check with losses to Heerenveen and FC Twente. The club would stay near the top for the remainder of the campaign, but would never be within 3 points of 1st place. that didn't mean this season was over, as FC Eindhoven were in the UEFA Conference League round of 16. FC Eindhoven's first European knockout match in history looked to be a memorable one. In Belgium versus Westerlo, Chrooman's lineup remained ordinary, and 25 minutes in, Verlaat's cross to Hershey was stopped, but the Hirschmeister was first to the rebound. Westerlo weren't dominated as they created a strong chance for themselves, but it was clear that Chrooman's side looked better. Before the hour mark, Ian Verlaat doubled the lead. Not long later, the ref awarded a penalty and Ian Verlaat again added. The 3-goal gap would be enough, as despite losing the second leg, FC Eindhoven moved on to the quarterfinals. At the quarter and semi-final draw, Feyenoord were a possible opponent and had a great season with Christian Iltzer's formation, which was the exact same as Chrooman's. They defeated the respectable FC Michelin in the playoffs and handled Sturm Graz in the round of 16, who were one of the two perfect sides. Unfortunately, the two wouldn't face off. Feyenoord got an easy draw as they faced a club from Slovakia. Eindhoven, on the other hand, would face the other perfect side, Stad Renee. If Chrooman overcame France's 4th place team, he'd have to face Real Sociedad again or Aston Villa. Come on, man. At least Eindhoven entered the tie in good form, including another derby win. Regardless, Rennes were said to be difficult away from home. They had solid defensive-minded players like Leo Ustigard and Varmed Omari, tricky wingers like Marcus Edwards and Rayan Cherki, and goal scorers such as Amine Guiri and Arnaud Kalimuendo. The latter opened the encounter. Chrooman threw his arms into the air as his side had more shots in possession throughout the leg, but they couldn't find a breakthrough. Rennes were unlucky not to increase their advantage, with a narrow loss confirmed. Feyenoord easily won their first leg, and both Dutch sides faced each other before their second legs. Feyenoord still had a shot at the title, but Eindhoven ended that hope with Hershey's brace. Ajax in all of this were also in a European knockout stage, the Champions League, where they defeated Barcelona over 2 legs in the round of 16 and defeated Manchester City in leg 1 of the quarterfinals. However, their second leg ended in defeat after extra time. 2 days later in Eindhoven, Chrooman hoped to overcome their slim deficit, a difficult task made tougher with Brett Mouillin's injury. Still, FC Eindhoven started strong, but did not find a breakthrough by halftime. Although, that changed in the second half when Chrooman decided to up the tempo and play wider, as Marcus Edwards made their defenders look foolish. A pissed off Chrooman remained patient as in the 58th, Mr. Pringle would be found in behind to get one back. A couple minutes later, an Eindhoven corner couldn't be cleared properly, which led to a couple passes as Dan Heisman found the aggregate equalizer. In the final 15 minutes, Rennes won the ball, slowed down a counter, and sped it back up as Guiri combined with Cherki to reinstate their lead. Before anyone could breathe, Eindhoven were on the offensive, as with a little luck, a cross from Ponti found Ian Verlaat. Rennes were hasty from the kickoff, as Eindhoven stole the ball and quickly got into their opponent's box. And who would be found again? Ian Verlaat. Eindhoven's first lead in the tie, as Rennes looked dazed. Eindhoven performed fantastically and deserved to move on to the semi-finals, where they faced Aston Villa. It'd be the first time Chrooman returned to England since his dismissal at Manchester United, but the first leg will be hosted in Eindhoven. Well, technically in Tilburg, since their stadium is too small for UEFA standards. Aston Villa struggled in the Premier League, but that wouldn't matter if they won this trophy. Managed by Roger Schmidt, Gelame Restes was their keeper, Pau Torres and Roger Ibanez as their center backs, with Matty Cash and Morato on the flanks. McGinn and Onana partnered in the midfield, with Ian Matson and Anand Kaleli as wingers. Up top, it was Rikarlison and Tammy Abraham. Chrooman meanwhile had to deal with the injuries of Mouillin and Tom Bischoff, who became an important player. That meant the midfield options off the bench weren't fit or were non-existent. The action was limited for the first half, with Villa close from corners, but before halftime, Ibanez's touch was messy, and Hershey's press saw the ball roll perfectly to Verlaat, and before he could shoot, he was taken down in the box. Verlaat had been the penalty taker, but after his miss in a 0-0 draw to Willem II, Chrooman gave that honor to Sergio Gonzalez. A surprising lead into halftime, but the half wasn't done yet, as a minute later, Eindhoven would win the ball back and Ian Verlaat would impact the game again as he'd put in a cross to Mr. Pringle, who made it 2-0. Villa would take it to another level after the interval, as mistakes began to occur and more chances for the villains. Still, they were denied multiple times, but Chrooman knew they couldn't keep a clean sheet for much longer. He just didn't think it'd be a gift. A brutal way to concede, but in the 78th minute, Eindhoven kept attacking, and a cross from Brown landed on Hershey's head to restore the 2-goal lead. Villa were determined to close the gap, as Madsen's chance was a close call, but on the subsequent corner, Tielemans found just enough space to score. Chrooman was set for a more cautious approach, but he cancelled those plans thinking a 1-goal lead wasn't enough. 5 minutes before the 90th, a hopeful ball from Elder reached Ian Verlaat, and he found the back of the net. The only question was whether it was onside, and VAR confirmed it. Eindhoven held on for a memorable 4-2 victory. It's a great advantage to have, but Villa can be a strong side at home, as 3 weeks prior, they defeated Real Sociedad 3-0. Meanwhile, Feyenoord's 2-2 draw at Hoffenheim meant an all-Dutch final could be 90 minutes away. At Villa Park, the lineups were similar on both ends, but could this young Eindhoven side handle the pressure? An Aston Villa free kick in the 9th minute would be scored by Onana. Tammy Abraham has scored. The tie has been equalized within 10 minutes. Aston Villa have overturned the tie in 12 minutes. Clearly, FC Eindhoven were not ready for this big stage, as in the second half, Richarlison found the fourth, leaving Chrooman with no answers. The players who performed incredibly in Leg 1 couldn't match that away from home, and with few options off the bench that could make an impact, it was Aston Villa who reached the Conference League final. Would they face Feyenoord? Oh boy. In Leg 2, Feyenoord went up 3-0 in the 53rd minute. However, Hoffenheim made an incredible comeback with 4 goals in 17 minutes. Feyenoord did equalize it in the 82nd, but Hoffenheim kept going with goals in the 84th and 89th to reach the Conference League final, where they'd get destroyed 3-0. Domestically, Ajax won the Eredivisie by 5 points, despite Chrooman's 3-all draw with them on the penultimate day. FC Eindhoven finished in 3rd, in what was a fantastic season. Chrooman still had work to surpass Tenhog's accomplishments at Utrecht, but if he could win a trophy next season with a top 2 finish, or even win the Eredivisie, he'd feel accomplished. His young team was only getting better, especially Ian Verlaat, who won the Conference League Young Player of the Season. Although, he finished runner-up in the Eredivisie Young Award for the 2nd year running to his teammate. Congrats to Hershey though. Now what about Erik Tenhog? I guess time will tell if this guy can actually get another job. This season will be Chrooman's 3rd in the Eredivisie. If he wins a trophy, that easily surpasses Erik's accolades, allowing him to continue the chase, if he feels like it. A huge sale occurred when Nenad Eller sold to Nantes for over 30 million. Bouzas collected half of the revenue, but did promise a new stadium. It'll happen. One day. A center back out led to an improvement to the entire defense. Tarek Boekman for $1.5 million, Bart van Rooij at right back for less than 7 million, and Bob Zwart for under 8, who as a teenager had a great season with Groningen. Sales from those who were used less led to improvements in other areas. Nicolai Kruse landed from Copenhagen at 5 million, Thiago Freitas on loan with an option to buy, and the permanent return of Ayad Talea, which led to a concerned Verlaat. He wondered why Talea needed to return with the numbers he and Hershey put up. He stayed loyal while the club was under financial insecurity, and Talea did not. Chrooman understood his frustration and assured him that he is the #1 man. As Verlaat left, Chrooman whispered, "Dumbass, we need any homegrown players we can get." Regardless, the transfers look good, especially after a 2-1 win over Feyenoord. Mr. Pringle hasn't been showcased yet, but he scored 3 in the first 2 games. In the initial 5 matches, Ajax dropped points, and FC Eindhoven would as well. A draw to Volendam and a loss to Almere City kept them behind. Still, Eindhoven played well with multiple clean sheets. Then a random loss appeared out of nowhere versus Willem II. Ajax continued to earn victories, and with them at the end of October, Chrooman's campaign could be defined. Although, maybe a more important fixture occurred earlier in the month, as it was the Eindhoven Derby. PSV recently appointed a new manager, Ruud van Nistelrooy. Ruud! Ruud. The man who played buddy-buddy with Erik Tenhog somehow got a job at Lyon. He'd rightfully get sacked by them 2 years later, but now Chrooman had to deal with him here. It began in the first minute as Thiago Freitas opened the encounter. PSV responded as Andrade exposed the space behind their defense. However, the local boy Ian Verlat, who rejected PSV multiple times as a youngster, would take back the lead. Unfortunately, the defense forgot the idea of marking, as in the second half, Andrade again equalized, and that's how it ended. Victories surrounded that result, which included a 3-0 triumph over AZ. Next up is Ajax, who have a 6-point advantage. The Amsterdam club dominated, yet somehow Eindhoven kept it scoreless until a corner in the second half. It was for Chrooman's side, but Ajax countered and had numbers forward. Musa received a pass in the box and scored. Ajax got another late to confirm the defeat. Despite a strong start to the season, Ajax were better and continued their form. They wouldn't lose in the league for the remainder of the calendar year, while Eindhoven drew a few games in December to fall behind by 13 points. Ajax kept several players that somehow weren't bought, had old man Mitrovic who's programmed to destroy Dutch clubs, and were able to buy Sam Adingra for 99 million. How can Chroo compete when his tycoon owner was more like a crypto scammer? Nevertheless, Eindhoven were in the Europa League. With 2 extra matches, how did they fare? In spite of 2 penalties from Rosenberg, Ayatollah and a Carlos Reyes brace provided their first victory. Genk were defeated away from home with an Ian Verlat goal. Even Athletic Bilbao were no match. A Hershey header after the half and a late corner led to a 3rd consecutive win. Rangers were a little too strong with their European experience, as despite Mr. Pringle opening the encounter, Rangers responded twice unanswered. Maccabi Haifa were no problem, as were Slavia Prague with 2 3-0 victories. The most challenging fixture on paper was Borussia Dortmund, who sacked Nuri Sahin a month prior for Leonardo Jardim, and they were destroyed 4-0. The league stage concluded with Midtjylland easily handled too, as FC Eindhoven finished in 2nd on goal difference, behind Aston Villa. Will Chrooman see them in the knockouts? Europe seems set for another fun campaign, but the more realistic option of a trophy is the Dutch Cup. For one, you don't have to run into an English team. However, Ajax will be a problem at any point in the tournament. It started with the second round away at Groningen. Chrooman set up a strong lineup outside of the strikers, who were Talea and Juan Lemon, who opened the encounter. Groningen didn't lay down though, as less than 10 minutes later, they equalized. In the final stretch, a few tweaks were made as Mr. Pringle scored to restore the lead. While Groningen maintained their danger, Talea sealed the victory to send them to the 3rd round. Sad news followed. El Bucha left the club. He wasn't able to keep up with the team's improvements, which caused him to venture elsewhere. Fans were they were happy he left? Next up is 2nd division side Peg Zwolle. Because of the level of opposition, Chrooman rotated his defense, which included keeper Wale Balogun. He's a Nigerian bought for free a little while ago, and this is his debut. Chrooman was confident of a victory, especially with Peg Zwolle down a man from the 12th minute. But 60 seconds passed, and they combined down the right to fire a low cross to Konings for the opener. What the defenders were doing is a fair question. Half an hour in, Verlat earned a chance. 5 minutes later, Sergio Gonzalez banged in an equalizer. A momentum switch, as right after the interval, Talea scores. Offside. John Thompson in the 58th? Offside. Verlat had some opportunities too, yet it remained level. In the 80th minute, despite being down to 10 men, Peg Zwolle charged forward, and out of nothing, Boonstedt smashed this in. 2-1. Panic jolted Chrooman, as this was supposed to be the competition he could win. They're not even up against an Eredivisie side, and they were 10 minutes away from embarrassment. Verlat was subbed out for Hershey, and right from the kickoff, Sergio Gonzalez couldn't help himself. Eindhoven kept the pressure up, and a cross from a Tef found Hershey's head for an equalizer. The final whistle blew as extra time began. In the first minute, John Thompson took the lead, but the ref disallowed it for offside again. Don't worry, Hershey's goal is perfectly legal, as would the next 2 strikes. Again from Hershey and Talea to escape with a 5-2 victory. Eindhoven advanced to the quarters. All the big boys were... Wait, where's Ajax? Unlike Eindhoven, Vitesse defeated them on penalties. Well, thank you. Anyways, the draw looked to be a 50-50 chance of a difficult encounter. Granted, a home draw against any of these teams wouldn't bother Chrooman. Volendam versus Vitesse. AZ versus Valvik. Utrecht versus Feyenoord. Which means it would be the Eindhoven derby away from home. Chrooman versus Ruud Part 2 in late January looked to be the most important derby Chrooman has managed. Early on, the blue side of the city attacked. Hershey controls a cross and waits before he releases it to Carlos Reyes for the opener. That remained the sole shot of the match until the half-hour mark, and a couple minutes later, Muyin's delivery met Peda's head. PSV's initial attempt on goal didn't happen until the second half, and a little past the hour, Brent Muyin extended the lead. Ruud has been embarrassed at his house, although after a few subs, PSV began to participate. They found a first in the 88th minute, and right before added time, Aston grabbed another. Chrooman began to sweat, so he wasted time and conceded a third, but it's offside, and the blue side confirmed the win. A semi-final, bragging rights, and revenge over Ruud. What a perfect day for Chrooman. FC Eindhoven are unbeatable. Well, according to the media. But who would they play in the semi-finals? A home game versus Feyenoord. What a tough run to get into the final. Despite Chrooman's victory and unlucky draw to them, they're still a great team. And it's the final the fans didn't get last year. Luckily for Chrooman, Feyenoord had a midweek Champions League encounter with Lyon in the playoff round, which saw them eliminated. Eindhoven had the week off, so the best possible lineup is available, except for Ian Verlaat. It'd be another quick start. A goal kick up the pitch leads to Hershey making an incredible pass to Muyin, and the American puts it in the bottom corner. Eindhoven looked like the better team, but Feyenoord did create opportunities that might have gone in if they were sharper. Still, with the lead in the second half, a second will be found by Van Rooij to secure Eindhoven into the KNVB final, which will be played against Volendam. Before that, the Europa League knockouts. Chrooman's vibe was off, and it wasn't because of the haggis he ate prior to kickoff. In the locker room, he was informed that Tenhog found a new job. That new job had him worried, but he needed to shift his focus on Rangers. They narrowly lost to Aston Villa in the Conference League last year, and had threats like Balogun. However, they had unexpected threats, such as their inverted wingback Karbovnik, who sneaked in and scored a beauty. It happens, and it wouldn't be a massive shock to lose this leg by one. But eyebrows were raised when a short corner connected with Maz Roerslev. Before the half, Eindhoven imploded as Diomande ran with the ball unchallenged and made it 3-0. The defenders lost their heads in the dressing room, which required them to see the bench. Ian Verlaat instigated a comeback with 30 minutes to go. A comeback that was short-lived, as a cross to Noah Fernandez left the defenders hopeless. That was the crucial goal, as a 2-0 win at home saw Eindhoven eliminated. No European run, and no redemption against Aston Villa, who also lost in the round of 16. Tenhog's new job got announced. Erik Tenhog is appointed coach of the USA. Oh shit. To overcome European heartbreak and Tenhog, Chrooman would get his side to demolish Ruud's PSV 6-1. Even Ruud had to give him credit. His mood improved as in the Nations League, Tenhog's USA lost to Mexico in the semi-finals and fell to Canada in the bronze medal game. Chrooman couldn't be happier. To sum up the Eredivisie campaign, Eindhoven finished in second, which included ending Ajax's undefeated season. Albeit, they won the title long ago and finished above both Eindhoven clubs by 15 points. Verlaat and Hershey were prolific, but not like Mitrovic. Huge shout out to Nathaniel Brown though with 13 assists. So, Chrooman has matched Tenhog's second place finish, done better than him in Europe, and can earn a trophy. FC Eindhoven haven't won the KNVB Beker since 1937, nearly a century since then, and the only other trophy the club has won is the Eredivisie in 1954. Volendam, meanwhile, have been runners-up twice in the Dutch Cup, with the previous one happening in 1995. On their run to the final, they defeated FC Lisse, SC Cambuur, Vitesse, and AZ Alkmaar. However, in their 5 matches since the semi-final, they have scored 2 goals and have lost 3 in a row. Them in this final is a bigger surprise than Eindhoven. And while Eindhoven haven't lost to them in over 2 years, the previous time was in the Dutch Cup. Chrooman set up the team as such. Babits in net, Nathaniel Brown and Matteo Ponte as fullbacks,
Zwart!
and Patrick Petta at center back, Sergio Gonzalez as the anchor, Dan Heischmann placed as the advanced playmaker, and Thiago Freitas instead of Carlos Reyes as the Metsala. Mr. Pringle played instead of Nguyen due to an injury, and up top is the main duo of Hershey and Ian Verlat. Can Chrooman do it? They caused danger from the off, and in the 11th minute, a ball from Ponte found Freitas, who cut it back to Hershey, as this wouldn't be close. Hershey scored again before the interval. Zwart made it 3 in the second half, and Ian Verlat finished it off with the 4th. FC Eindhoven are KNVB Beker winners, and Chrooman has won his first trophy in his managerial career. He came to Eindhoven for revenge, and to be known as a better manager than Tenhog. Along the way, he learned many things. Funny nicknames improve the club atmosphere, Eric and Ruud are frauds, and most importantly of all, chasing this challenge to surpass Tenhog led to a better opportunity. He's become a great manager. Okay, he's become an adequate manager. But you have to respect the adequacy of improving a club who once thought they'd never return to the Eredivisie to now one worthy of silverware. That's all thanks to Boozos' shady crypto funds, which he definitely didn't rug pull out of anybody.
2 years later.
The idea of Chrooman's career involved him chasing Tenhog wherever he went, even if that meant internationally. With Tenhog in the States, Chrooman took charge of Canada after learning that Alphonso Davies retired. Chrooman managed to qualify for the World Cup and convinced Fonzie to come back. The man immediately retired again, following their disastrous showing. Tenhog meanwhile made the quarterfinals, making Chrooman's ability to surpass him insurmountable. However, in other competitions, he could at least match him, such as in the Nations League. No. Well, the Gold Cup looks doable. Canada made the semi-finals and had to face Jamaica. A potential Tenhog final awaited for Jamaica. So about chasing Tenhog, Chrooman resigned in embarrassment and decided to focus on winning the Eredivisie instead of worrying about damn Eric. He can have the international prestige of losing the Gold Cup final to Jamaica. Club-wise, Chrooman is the better manager after 2024. During those Canada years, Chrooman was allowed to stay as FC Eindhoven manager. Yet, juggling 2 jobs at once did impact the club's side, as in the 2029-30 season, they would finish in 4th, knocked out of the Dutch Cup in the quarterfinal, and lost to Atletico Madrid in the playoff before the proper knockout stage. The next campaign, they rebounded in the Eredivisie with 80 points, but Ajax again were too strong with 94. Also, they couldn't win the Europa League as they unluckily faced Chelsea in the semis and lost over 2 legs. At the very least, they won the Dutch Cup versus Nek Nijmegen. Advancing past the international debacle, Chrooman seemed excited for the future. So how does the FC Eindhoven side look? The Nigerian Wale Balogun has returned from a Southampton loan where he stopped a penalty in the playoff final. Signed in 2027, he's taken another step in becoming a star goalkeeper. Nathaniel Brown is now American and continues to put consistent showings at left back. Zwart is now considered a world-class center back, although his Dutch compatriot is not. Mexican Gianmarco Tadeo has moved to defensive midfield, which has also made him world-class. Thiago Freitas continues to boss the midfield, with Nicolai Kruse being his partner. Chrooman has kept a few of the original Americans in Carlos Reyes and Brett Nguyen, but their minutes have and are expected to decrease. At striker, the Academy boys are still here, with Ayatalea and Ian Verlat. In the 2 years, exits occurred, such as Hershey to Ipswich Town, John Thompson to AZ, Juan Lemon to Werder, and an Egyptian midfielder named Ar Abdel Rahim, who went to Fulham of all places for 97 million. A couple left on freeze too, such as Louis Babatz and Sergio Gonzalez. It's been a while, so many names have been forgotten. To begin, Chrooman had to battle Ajax for the Johan Cruyff Schaal, which involved several new faces. Mario was signed in the previous season for 29 million from Zaragoza. Could he force Brown to the bench? Next, a man from Turkey named Deniz Ulkan arrived from Galatasaray for 24 million. And he broke his ankle, so we won't be seeing him much. Muyen never dies. A new right back named Elitson came to replace Ponte at 20.5 million. And he too was injured for this encounter. Well, at least John Bellion, Emerson Bellon is fit, as the Mexican striker joined the club for 8.25 million and looks to be Verlat's right-hand man. Thanks to him, Chrooman would claim the Supercut with a 65th minute winner. The Mexican got injured and missed the start of the campaign. Nonetheless, a bright start to lift the trophy and defeat Ajax for only the third time in Chrooman's career. Is this a sign of things to come?
I'm at an all-time.
By the new year, Eindhoven were 6 points behind Ajax, which isn't bad with the start they had. Plus, with no European football, the Eredivisie is the sole focus. Still, a loss to Feyenoord in December could have been avoided, as would a draw versus affiliate club Vitesse, seeing a last-minute equalizer. There were deals made before a lot of this fallout, like the reluctant loan of American Daniel Revan from Manchester United. There's also Flossie, loaned from Bayern, and the transfer of Canadian James Nagy from the Bavarians, who cost more than Ballon. However, on the January deadline, madness ensued. The sale of fullbacks Matteo Ponte and Katsuhiro Kitabatake occurred, along with Fred Jan Breig. Those three deals totaled close to 70 million, which would be enough to sign Konstantinos Karitsas, aka Carrot Sauce. An incredible attacking midfielder, which is not where he would play. Center mid is his spot, as Brett Muyen was having the season of a lifetime. In 18 matches, including 7 off the bench, he had 10 goals and 3 assists. Unfortunately, a lot of his teammates underperformed, and that led them unable to defend the Dutch Cup. A fixture early in February versus PSV saw former player Martin Sternak score a brace to knock them out. Luckily, Ruud wasn't the manager, as he got sacked long ago. However, attain a couple positive outcomes in the Eredivisie, and who knows what can happen. Ajax can't stay perfect forever. While they did go undefeated in the league that spanned across years for 71 matches consecutively, their invincibility got cracked by Chrooman earlier in the campaign. Now, he had to be perfect. After Nakbrada. As a result of that disappointing loss, Ajax were 7 points ahead at the start of March. There were still 2 to play before the 2 faced off. In addition, Ajax were in the Dutch Cup, and their midweek triumph over Volendam saw them make the final, but they weren't fully rested for Feyenoord on the weekend. Feyenoord would go 2-0 up, only to concede 2 in the second half and drop. At least the drop points provided Eindhoven an opportunity to get within 5, and they did just that with a 4-0 victory past go-ahead Eagles. Both sides won their next match, which brought them together at the Johan Cruyff Arena. A few players were either injured or unfit for the encounter, which led to this lineup. A little more cautious, with Tadeo playing as a ball-winning midfielder in the middle, with Mario as the anchor. Now, Ajax may have been overconfident, as a few key players were rested like Shutalo and Adingra. Whatever lineup they choose, a win is required to get within 2 points. It begins in the 5th minute, where Nathaniel Brown's delivery finds Zwart's massive head for the lead. 15 minutes later, another corner is sent in, and while Zwart can't reach it, Carrot Sauce does, and smacks the bar. 35 minutes in, Ajax can't reach Eindhoven's net, as a lazy pass is intercepted by Elitson, who passes it to Muyen, and the American finds Verlat first time, and the Academy kid sneaks past their back line to make it 2. A massive strike that would be Muyen's 20th goal contribution in the Eredivisie. Sadly, he soon got injured. He'd be out for a month and would miss out on an international call-up. Despite that, an incredible half by Chrooman's men. A penalty in the second half sealed it for Eindhoven, as they were now within smelling distance of Ajax. And that scent was sweaty. With an international break putting a pause in the season, let's have a look at Canada. Oh, they lost 4-0 to Tenhog, who's their new manager. What? No, I'm kidding. Although, it's another Dutch manager. With Ajax and Eindhoven winning, let's skip to matchday 30, as it would be the Eindhoven Derby. The Eindhoven Derby was supposed to happen 3 days after Ajax, but due to several players in the back line on international duty for some reason, Chrooman demanded the league to delay the game, and they did. Now it would happen on the same weekend as Ajax's Dutch Cup victory. With both sides winning the fixtures prior to this, can Eindhoven use this game in hand to maintain a 2-point gap? The chances arrived for the blue side throughout the first half and the early parts of the second, but nothing could be found. That's until the 61st minute, as a low cross from Aston finds Talea for the opener. Chrooman decided to switch to more defensive roles while maintaining the attack. That led to another low cross, this time from Brown, whose delivery gets intercepted straight to Verlat. FC Eindhoven prevailed and remained 2 points behind first with 4 to go. So let's run it down match by match. Matchday 31, Eindhoven versus Utrecht, and Ajax versus Go Ahead Eagles. Ajax would handle their opponents with ease, and things looked challenging for Eindhoven. Utrecht would equalize, and Talea's missed penalty didn't help things. But in the 63rd minute, he'd be sent for a run and smash the ball to get back the lead. Eindhoven remained compact and copied Ajax's outcome. Matchday 32 saw no problems from FC Eindhoven, with a 6-0 victory, all scored in the first half. Ajax won 3-0. To the penultimate match day, Eindhoven visited PEC Zwolle and Ajax hosted Fortuna Sittard. PEC Zwolle thrived in their role as spoilers. It seemed to be one of those days, where you create and create but cannot materialize anything. Don't doubt this team, as in the 79th minute, the second ball from a corner led to Chrooman's men passing the ball around the box. Several players were afraid to make a mistake, so Nathaniel Brown decided to say "F*** it" and hit a first-time shot into the net. A narrow win looked likely, but PEC Zwolle's Topic also thought, what's there to lose, and blasted a shot from 30 yards. Barlugun managed to get a fingertip on it. 3 points confirmed. Meanwhile, in Amsterdam, Ajax won with ease. They really locked in after that loss. However, their last match would be against their rivals, PSV. PSV would either have to see their arch nemesis lift the trophy again, or their city rivals. Maybe seeing their historical hatred for Ajax and the sight of their players dropping to their knees in front of 54,000 distraught fans would motivate them. Ajax would have their biggest league win of the season and lift the Eredivisie again. I guess Chrooman shouldn't have expected anything from them. Despite a record point total, Eindhoven again finished second behind Ajax. This one hurt though. Ajax weren't as dominant as the previous years, but sadly a couple bad games costed Eindhoven their first league title since 1954. Although Chrooman feels they're close and is determined to succeed. Talea wasn't, as all of his determination vanished. He wasn't a good team player, not brave at all, and was always on TikTok during training. But at least he had determination until now. Nevertheless, this will be Chrooman's last season at FC Eindhoven. Can he finally win the Eredivisie? It would be a historical campaign, with the club moving into the FC Eindhoven Stadium, a 20,400 capacity stadium, and in its first game, FC Eindhoven would lose to Sparta Rotterdam. That includes a missed penalty and a crap load of chances, making Sparta's new keeper the star in sequel film You Don't Mess with the Zoagi. That's despite a ton of depth options signed to keep the spots on the 11 competitive, which involved 5 players exceeding 80 million. Most of that was funded by the exit of Mario for over 60 million, plus a few long-term players. Guys like Van Ruij, Nicolai Kruse, Eric, and Patrick Peda. The Pole was here for 6 seasons. The best signing? Maybe the loan of Pavel Ferret of Uruguay. Still, Chrooman couldn't prevent bad things from happening at the start of the season again. To start, he rejected Bayern, saying they were 1 year too early. With their 8th manager target rejecting them, they might have been a little salty as they stole Chrooman's assistant Victor Wanyama. Not to be manager, but to be Rose's assistant. Plus, like last season, injuries were prevalent. That included Elliotson and Verlat missing key parts of preseason. Worst of all, Balogun got hurt for 2 months. That meant Robin Roofs had to begin the season, which included the Supercup loss to Ajax and that home opener. Things got worse as he got injured before September, which meant a third string keeper had to be used against AZ and Ajax. Who is that? Well, it would be Niels Jonathan Karber, who Chrooman signed because he had to. How did Eindhoven do with him in net? He conceded a goal versus Excelsior, yet Eindhoven won. AZ Alkmaar? Well, issues arrived. Rotational right back Chris Jones was forced off in the 3rd minute, and with Elliotson unavailable, a center back had to go there. AZ proceeded to score a banger. In the second half, Karber's hands were as useful as a wet paper towel, and he'd be beaten again from a poor angle to see Eindhoven lose. A 6.1 rating isn't a great look, but the team were ready to make sure a bad performance wouldn't cost them against Ajax. A 2-0 lead by the 38th minute is an ideal start, although prior to the interval, Ajax sent Sewani in behind, and instead of staying calm, Karber collapsed. In the second half, a slide tackle magically goes to Musa, who equalizes the encounter. Ajax realized they could try anything and there'd be a good chance for a goal, like Kenneth Taylor using the outside of his boot. Not even in the Trivela sense. Chrooman nearly threw a case of water bottles with this goal, but luckily it was offside. Couldn't be said for the actual 4th goal, as the keeper provided 2 different reactions to Valise's shot, and neither saved it. A 5th will be found before full time, as Ajax has potentially won another Eredivisie. Karber entered the fixture on a 5.2 rating. Chrooman tore his contract on the pitch, as Karber's 11 days at the club was terminated and he'd be forced into retirement. 3 more draws occurred for the remainder of the first half of the season, placing Eindhoven 8 points behind Ajax with a game in hand as 2033 kicked off. That's in spite of Balogun receiving another injury. At least the Champions League went well, with a softer schedule leading to a top 8 placement. Wins past PSG and Dortmund were the highlights. Since it's January, transfers were on the table, and with murmurs of Tadeo attracting interest from Manchester City, the offer finally arrived. An offer worth over 200 million? More than 100 up front, and most of it was guaranteed. If Chrooman had a couple more years with his team, sure, he'd accept it. It'd be crazy not to. However, he rejected it, along with Tadeo's transfer request. For their stature, it is hard to find a defensive midfielder on this level, and the new Swiss signing was too new to make that spot his own. By the end of the window though, Tadeo stayed, a couple loans came in, and Ayatollah got sold to PSV. He only wanted PSV. Results-wise, January saw 3 victories, which included a simple 3-0 triumph against AZ, making up for the loss earlier in the campaign. Of course, that means Ajax is next. To this point, the attacking triangle of Verlat, Bellon, and Muyin were unstoppable. The latter is still surprising everyone. No matter who is signed or who tries to take his spot, he never dies. So far, he has more goal contributions than appearances in the Eredivisie. Meanwhile, with Ajax, they were 5 points ahead. So a win would narrow that margin, and with nobody else involved in this race, it had to be done in order to keep up the head-to-head chase. It'll be difficult away from home, but they're in the middle of a Champions League playoff. 6 minutes in, a chance from point-blank range is stopped. Moving into the 20th, a corner kick is cleared away as Carrot Sauce gets to it first, passes it to Zwart, who then finds Brown, who skies it over. Another corner arrives 5 minutes later, and Muyin's delivery to Zwart is on the money. 1-0 Eindhoven. Ajax responds right away. However, this time it's Barlogun with the point-blank stop. At the half, it looked pretty even on paper, but Zwartnogen is the difference. After the break, Ballon at an all-time high with his season performances gets the ball past the Ajax's defender's tackle and whips it to the far post for carrot sauce, doubling their margin. A fantastic start to the half, and that continued at the 54th minute mark as Zwart again heads in a corner. Not a single Ajax fan could be heard at the Johan Cruyff Arena. Eindhoven has a 3-0 lead. That finally woke Ajax up, as a few minutes later, a cleared free kick led to Mansberg finding Persilis to get one back. Soon from kickoff, Carrot Sauce would lose the ball, and Ajax countered. Abada sprints down the right, and despite the ball being tackled away, it falls to Taylor. Freitas' tackle on him sees the ball move towards Sewane, who brings Ajax within one, just like that. Chrooman made several changes to wake the team up and slow the tempo. That includes subbing in the Ferret, who doesn't always start, yet provides a crap ton of assists. Changes helped, but towards the end of the game, Ajax amped up the pressure. Tons of decisive passes found Musa wide open, who found Abada in behind for the equalizer, which was narrowly offside. Chrooman's panic led to a 5-back formation used, and that switch would cost him. In the 91st minute, with the keeper up, an Ajax corner is delivered, and Belize would be pushed by Ceballos, the guy who just got here. It would be the infracted Belize taking on Barlogun. To return the 4-point advantage, Belize is stopped by Barlogun. Eindhoven won and moved within 2 points of Ajax. A near disappointing collapse saved by the Nigerian, as with 11 to go, Eindhoven had to keep up the results, and the same goes for Ajax. In the same week, Ajax would be eliminated in the Champions League, and in the round of 16, Eindhoven would be too. It seemed to be a favorable matchup with RB Leipzig, the team who defeated Ajax on pens. Despite a first leg triumph at the Red Bull Arena and defeating Feyenoord 4-0 in between legs, at home, the attack didn't show up and the defense was a clown fiesta, seeing a 4-2 loss, 6-5 on aggregate. After that encounter, it would be the Eindhoven derby. Since the Ajax game, Eindhoven didn't stop winning, making it 7 in a row, and no losses for 20 fixtures. Ajax unfortunately haven't lost since that penalty shot, and played Excelsior on the same day. They'd unsurprisingly win, and in Eindhoven, it looked to be a toughly fought derby. James Nagy opened the scoring in the 21st minute, but former player Martin Černak equalized less than 10 minutes later. Then, not long before halftime, Norman and his longest last name in the world decides to fly with 2 feet to nearly break Wanani's shin. A deserved red, and a few minutes later, Tomas Suslov would score from a ridiculous angle to take the lead. Everything looked bad as a team with 10 men struggled to muster much. Černak nearly extended the gap, but FC Eindhoven remained in the fight and sent everyone forward. They'd earn a corner in added time. The delivery wasn't great, but it got cleared back to Freitas, who notices Ceballos wide open at the other side of the box, and he lays it off to Elliotson, who equalizes the match. A loss is avoided. Still, it means Eindhoven falls 4 points behind Ajax. 7 to play, Eindhoven's calendar looked relatively straightforward, but the away games involved the current 6th, 7th, and 11th place teams. Plus, there is the Dutch Cup. Ajax has a tougher schedule with Feyenoord at home and away games against AZ and PSV. On matchday 28, the momentum of the late equalizer continued in a 4-1 win over Vitesse. Meanwhile in Alkmaar, who were hosting Ajax, Wouter Hoes was sent off in the 51st minute, and AZ, who lost the Dutch Cup final to them last season, responded with 3 goals. Now, the gap has dropped to 1. Matchday 29 saw no problems on both sides. Ajax defeated FC Utrecht 3-0, and Eindhoven won versus Heerenveen by the same margin. Matchday 30 seemed to be similar. Eindhoven scored in the first minute versus NAC Breda, and despite them finding the equalizer in the 16th minute, the Ferret responded right away to take the lead. However, a little after the half hour, the first goal scorer Bellon took the wrong inspiration from his Swiss teammate as he flew through a man and got sent away. This could be bad. But it wasn't, as 2 more were scored by the 52nd minute. At the same time, Ajax were hosting PEC Zwolle, and the Eindhoven supporters began getting loud before the hour mark because Manfred Ugalde scored from the spot for a Zwolle opener. Those celebrations lasted for 2 seconds as Ajax immediately equalized. Still, if the score remains, Eindhoven are in first. Sadly, a Mansbroek brace followed up, handing Ajax the win. Eindhoven with 10 men kept their lead too, as the small gap remained with 4 to go. Before those games could be concluded, both sides would compete in the KNVB Beker final. The two clubs have shared the trophy for the past 4 years. However, they never faced off in the final until now. Could this shift the momentum for either of these teams' seasons? Eindhoven seemed to be on the front foot with a pair of offside chances. Then in the 28th, Adingra held onto the ball for too long as he lost it and Eindhoven countered, seeing Brown earn a penalty. Thiago Freitas steps up and unlike Veliz, he slots it in. Freitas again is involved less than 10 minutes later as his corner finds Zwart to double the lead. Eindhoven were in control, and it stayed that way. A late counterattack from Ajax was the closest they got as FC Eindhoven win their 3rd Dutch Cup in 5 years. Will this victory spur them on to overthrow Ajax for the Eredivisie? Didn't seem like it, as matchday 31 saw Ajax cruise past Fortuna Sittard, while Eindhoven were in a scoreless encounter with Willem II. Great chance after great chance, this team failed to convert any of them. It was heading into added time with the stats looking like this. Luckily, a missed header from Willem II's defender confused their keeper as James Nagy is first to the ball and finds the opener. Verlat scored another late to stay within Ajax. Matchday 32 was a lot more comfortable for Eindhoven with a 5-0 win over NEC Nijmegen. Ajax had a tough Feyenoord side and won 2-0. This all feels like deja vu. Ajax continues to stay ahead of Eindhoven and now play a match against PSV. Although this year, it's in Eindhoven. But Chrooman can never trust that club. The blue side at the same time visited ADO Den Haag. A side under Memphis Depay finished in 4th and 6th in the last 2 seasons. Even though he left to make a rapt return, ADO remained a tough opponent. Shots were created, yet it remained scoreless. However, the fans in the away section sounded jolly as ever because Ajax were losing. PSV scored in the 8th, 16th, and 32nd minute. While Ajax got one back before the half, in the 53rd, their strong midfielder Sivert Mansberg got sent off. As things stood, Eindhoven are in first via goal difference. But wouldn't it be nice to have that spot for themselves? In the 88th minute, that would happen, as a cross from Brown leads to a ricocheted shot to Marcel Brandt, whose goal could decide the title. They got a second for good measure, as on the final match day at home, FC Eindhoven could lift the Netherlands' top division title for the first time since 1954, before the Eredivisie's founding. Of course, they would do it in style, as at home to Utrecht, it started with Ian Verlat and ended with Brett Muyen, as they won 6-0. Chrooman finally wins the Eredivisie. A story that began with him returning to the country for the sake of revenge. He built a great bond with the city's smaller fan base and built them into the country's best side. His head wasn't always focused on the club, leading to fans not even rating him as an icon. Yet, he remained determined after his international failures and realized he can achieve his actual ambitions here in Eindhoven. Belan and Verlaat with 20 and 22 goals respectively, each saw them earn awards. The Ferret on loan provided 13 assists. Barlogun suffered many injuries, but kept 12 clean sheets and conceded only 13 times in 21 fixtures. And that big head of Zwart won some big games. We can't stop there. To Nathaniel Brown, who stayed consistent for 6 years at left back. To Tadeo, who got over Chrooman rejecting City's crazy offer. Freitas, who led the outfielders well. And finally, Brett Nguyen, who despite only having 20 appearances in the league, had 21 contributions, including 13 goals. Chrooman is a champion, while Tenhog got sacked by the US and by a club in Turkey. He's also set to retire from on-hands management, but is still above Chrooman in the Dutch Hall of Fame.